They were ready to convict her. 11 jurors. 12 days of trial. One final decision. And all of them, except me, had already made up their minds. I watched them, one by one, mark their ballots. Small nods. Crossed arms. Restless feet under the table. They didn't want to be here any longer. They wanted to go home. And in their minds, Allison Grant was guilty. Case closed. I still remember the look on her face when the verdict discussion began. She didn't flinch, didn't plead, didn't even blink. She just lowered her eyes, folded her hands like she was preparing for execution, like she knew it was over before it began. But there was something about her that gripped me from day one. Not sympathy, not doubt, something else. Let me go back a little. My name's Lena Hart. I'm a nurse. Or mostly. I've seen more death than I'd care to admit. People think nurses are soft. They don't know what it takes to hold a dying person's hand while their family screams in the hallway. They don't know what it's like to watch a drunk driver cry when he realizes he killed a kid. I've seen guilt. Real guilt. And Allison didn't wear it. She didn't carry the tremble in her shoulders, the twitch in her lips, the shallow breathing I've come to recognize when someone's hiding something unspeakable. No, she was different, detached, like someone watching her own life happen from outside her body. They said she killed her husband, Brian Grant. They said she bludgeoned him with a fire poker. 3 blows. No hesitation. They said she wiped the prints, staged a break-in and left the scene. Then came home 2 hours later and discovered his body. She called 911 with a calm voice. Too calm, they said. They played the call in court. 911, what's your emergency? My husband is dead. Are you sure, ma'am? Yes. There's blood. Everywhere. Not a scream. Not a cry. The prosecutor played that recording twice just to make sure we noticed. They said no woman could be that calm, unless she already knew. The neighbors testified next. Said they heard shouting the night before. Said the Grants were always fighting. Said Brian was thinking about filing for divorce. They painted a picture of a broken marriage. Of jealousy. Of motive. The final nail in the coffin? Her car. Caught on a traffic camera 4 blocks from the scene, 23 minutes before the estimated time of death. So why didn't I believe it? Why did I sit there listening to it all and still feel like something was off? Maybe it was the way she looked at the prosecutor, not angry, not scared, but hollow. Maybe it was the way she never once tried to defend herself. She just sat quiet like a person who'd already been judged long ago. Or maybe it was something I couldn't even explain. A gut feeling. When deliberation started, I expected discussion. But it wasn't a conversation. It was a verdict looking for a signature. We all agree, right? Guilty. No doubt. She's cold. I listened. Watched them pat themselves on the back for seeing through the act. When they turned to me, I just said, I'm not sure. And the room went silent. The foreman looked annoyed. You're not sure? No, I said. I think there's something we're not seeing. 12 days of evidence isn't enough for you? No, I said again. It doesn't add up. What doesn't? All of it, I told them. The timeline. Her reaction. Even the neighbor's testimony. There are gaps. They didn't like that. They thought I was emotional. Maybe they were right. But what they didn't know was that I'd already started digging. And what I was about to uncover would not only save a woman's life, it would expose a secret no one in that courtroom was ready to face. I didn't sleep that night. After court let out, I went home, kicked off my shoes, and sat in the dark. I kept hearing her voice on the 911 tape. There's blood. Everywhere. So calm. So flat. So rehearsed, or so they said. But the more I listened, in my memory over and over again, the more I realized something no one else had mentioned. She never asked for help. She never screamed for someone to come save him. Because, maybe, she already knew it was too late. That was the first thread. And when I pulled on it, everything began to unravel. The next morning, I did something no juror is supposed to do. I opened my laptop, typed in, Brian Grant death, preliminary reports. Dozens of headlines popped up. Most of them said the same thing. Wife suspected in brutal murder. Domestic dispute ends in tragedy. Perfect couple. Shocking end. But one article dated just 2 days after the incident caught my eye. It was from a local reporter. Short, unpolished. But it mentioned something I hadn't heard in court. Grant's sister arrived at the house before police were called. She claimed she found Allison in shock and dialed 911 from her own phone. Wait, what? In court they said Allison made the call. They played the call and told us it came from her cell phone. But this article claimed it was the sister who called? Why the lie? I dug further. Found public court records. Looked up the affidavit. Nothing about the sister. Nothing about her even being present. Just Allison. Covered in blood. Silent as a grave. It didn't make sense. Unless someone didn't want it to make sense. That day in the deliberation room I kept quiet. But I was watching. One juror, Franklin, had his arms crossed, staring at me like I was the problem. Another, Dana, kept sighing every time I asked a question. This isn't a mystery novel, she said. We're not detectives. But what if we were? What if the truth had slipped past the police, and the lawyers, and was sitting right under our noses? I made a decision. If no one else would ask the right questions, I would. That night I drove to the house. Yes, the house. The Grant's old home. It had been months since the crime. The crime scene tape was long gone. The windows were boarded. The grass overgrown. But the mailbox still had their name on it. Grant. And there was something about standing in front of that house. Something cold, something watching, that made the hairs on my arms rise. I wasn't scared. Not yet. But I was about to be. The house was quiet. No lights. No movement. Just the sound of bugs in the tall grass and the wind slipping through the loose siding. I stood there for a minute, watching, listening. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew if I left without trying, I'd regret it. So I walked around the side, past the garage, toward the back porch. That's when I saw it, a broken light fixture above the door, burnt wires dangling. I took out my phone and snapped a photo, not because it proved anything, but because something about it felt wrong. The police report said the back door was forced open, but the lock wasn't broken. Looked normal. Too normal. Back in my car, I pulled up the neighbor's testimony. Mrs. June Felder, 72 years old, lived next door for 41 years. She told the court she heard yelling around 9:45 p.m. Loud, angry voices, she said. Glass breaking. A man shouting. But on the news report I found, recorded just 3 days after the murder, she said something different. I didn't hear anything that night. I was sleeping. My hearing's not what it used to be. Wait, so which was it? Did she hear yelling, or was she asleep? I started digging into Mrs. Felder. Found an interview she gave to a local radio station during the trial. I just want justice for Brian. He was like a son to me. And that's when it hit me. She was close to him. Too close. Which meant she had a reason to protect someone. Maybe someone in the family. Maybe someone like Brian's sister. I went back to the article I read earlier. The one that said the sister, Allison Grant, arrived before the police. Why wasn't she mentioned at all in court? Why did the prosecution skip over her name? Unless they couldn't afford to have her involved. Maybe she said something in the beginning, something that didn't match the official story. And maybe someone told her to keep quiet. That night, I searched for Madeline on social media. Found her profile. Empty. Private. Except for one post. A quote. Family first. No matter what. It was posted 2 days after Brian died. No photo. No caption. Just that. And suddenly I felt it, that twist in my gut. The same one I get in the ER when a patient swears they're fine but their vitals scream otherwise. Someone was lying. Not Allison. Someone else. And the justice system didn't care to look deeper. But I would. Even if it meant breaking the rules. Even if it meant going back into the courtroom and standing against 11 people who thought they already knew the truth. Because the truth was this. The wrong person was about to go to prison. And I was the only one who could stop it. I wasn't supposed to contact her. I knew that. Jurors aren't allowed to speak to witnesses, especially not during an active trial. But this wasn't just a trial anymore. This was a mistake wrapped in a lie, wrapped in silence. And I couldn't let it go. I messaged her on Facebook. Simple. Polite. Madeline, my name is Lena. I'm on the jury for your brother's case. I believe something isn't right. I don't want to get you in trouble, but I need to talk. Just once. Please. I didn't expect a reply. But 5 minutes later, a dot appeared. Then a message. Meet me tonight. 11 p.m. Back parking lot, old library on Prescott. I almost didn't go. But at 10:45 I was sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers went numb. At 10:58 she showed up. Black hoodie. No makeup. Hair pulled into a tight knot. She looked nothing like she did in the news photos. She looked haunted. She got in the passenger seat without a word. And for a full minute we just sat there. No music. No questions. Just the sound of the wind tapping against the windshield. Then she whispered, "You think she didn't do it?" I nodded. "I think someone's protecting the wrong person." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, I saw it, the thing I'd seen in Allison's face. Resignation. But then she spoke, and what she said changed everything. I got to the house before the cops. Allison called me first, not 911. When I walked in, Brian was already gone. She was kneeling beside him, blood on her hands. But she wasn't crying. She was whispering to him, over and over again, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I felt my breath catch. "Did you make the 911 call?" I asked. She nodded. "I told the cops I did it from her phone. That's what they wanted. They didn't want the press saying she waited. They didn't want the story to be messy." "And the poker?" I asked. "The murder weapon?" She hesitated. "It wasn't bloody." That stopped me cold. "What?" "It was by the fireplace. Clean. Cold. Like it hadn't been used. But when the police came, it was already bagged. The cops, they didn't even let me finish what I was saying. They told me to go. Said they had everything they needed." I stared at her. "Why didn't you say anything?" She laughed, dry, bitter. "Because they didn't want the truth. They wanted a narrative. Angry wife. Cheating husband. Crime of passion. Simple. Easy. Sellable. Was he cheating?" She looked away. "Worse." Silence. Brian was controlling. Obsessive. He isolated her. Tracked her phone. He had cameras in the house, hidden ones. Even in the bathroom. My stomach turned. Why didn't she leave? She shook her head slowly. Because he said he'd kill her if she did. I wanted to scream. Cry. Do something. But I just sat there, jaw clenched, trying to make sense of everything. "So you think someone else killed him?" I asked. Madeline didn't answer right away. Then she looked straight at me and said, "I don't know. But I know she didn't. When she got out of the car, she didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. She just disappeared into the dark. And I sat there alone. Heart pounding. Mind racing. The truth wasn't just inconvenient. It was buried. And if I didn't dig it up, Allison would spend the rest of her life paying for a crime she didn't commit. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were tired. Her hands were shaking. But behind them was something stronger than doubt, certainty. I knew Allison didn't kill her husband. And I knew no one was going to speak up for her. Unless I did. I walked into the deliberation room 20 minutes early. The others trickled in slowly, coffee cups, tired eyes, bored expressions. They thought this was the final day. They thought we were going to vote, sign the paper, and be done. They had no idea what was coming. The foreman, Mr. Lee, tapped the table. "All right, let's make it official. Who's still holding out?" I raised my hand. "I am." Eyes rolled. Chairs squeaked. A few groans. "Come on, Lena," Dana snapped. "This again? You're the only one. We've all seen the evidence." I looked at each of them one by one. "Have you really?" I asked. "Because I don't think we've seen the whole truth. 12 days of trial. Someone started. 12 days of performance. I cut in. What if we've been watching the wrong play?" They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. So I took a deep breath and told them everything. About the article. About the sister's real 911 call. About the poker being clean. About the cameras in the house. About the threats. I didn't say where I got the information. Didn't have to. I just laid it out, like blood on the courtroom floor. Silence. Then someone laughed. "None of that is in evidence," Franklin said. "You can't bring in outside stuff. That's illegal." "Is it illegal to use your brain?" I shot back. "To question what doesn't add up?" Dana leaned forward. "Even if you're right, it doesn't matter. That's not our job. Our job is to judge what we've been given." "But what if what we've been given is incomplete?" I said. "What if it's manipulated?" They didn't answer. So I said the one thing I knew would land. We are about to send a woman to prison for the rest of her life. And none of us are actually sure she did it. The room changed. Suddenly, it wasn't about being right. It was about being responsible. Mr. Lee folded his arms. "So what do you want, Lena? A mistrial?" I shook my head. "I want you to think. I want you to look at what we've seen. Not what they told us to believe. I want you to remember the look on her face when they read the charges. That wasn't the look of guilt. That was the look of someone already buried." No one spoke for a while. Then, surprisingly, Dana sat back and sighed. "All right, let's go through it again. From the top." We spent the next 6 hours reviewing everything. Every timeline. Every photo. Every testimony. And little by little, things began to crack. The neighbor's shifting story. The timeline inconsistency. The lack of defensive wounds. The clean murder weapon. They couldn't explain them anymore, because the prosecution hadn't even tried to. When the second vote came, it was 6-6, then 8-4, then 11-1. The last one to change was Franklin. He looked at me with tight lips, then down at his paper. Not guilty, he muttered. We filed back into the courtroom. The judge looked bored. The prosecutor confident. Allison sat still, eyes fixed on the table. The clerk asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Mr. Lee stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We find the defendant not guilty," gasped. The prosecutor stiffened. The judge blinked. Allison didn't move. Not until she looked at me. And in her eyes, I saw life return. Outside, reporters swarmed. Microphones shoved in our faces. But I didn't speak. I just walked past them. Because the truth wasn't a headline. It wasn't a soundbite. It wasn't even about justice anymore. It was about not giving up when the system makes it easy to stay quiet. It was about one woman's life, and how close we came to throwing it away. All because no one bothered to listen. 3 months later, I was back in my usual rhythm. Her nights. Coffee that tasted like burnt hope. And patients who lied to my face while bleeding out. Normal. Predictable. But I wasn't the same. Because ever since the trial, silence felt heavier. Like the air had learned how to whisper. One rainy afternoon, just before shift changed, the front desk buzzed me. "Someone's asking for you." No name. Just said you'd understand. I walked out to the waiting area. And there she was. Allison. Wearing a gray coat. Hair shorter. Eyes softer. But unmistakably her. She stood when she saw me, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she smiled. Not the practiced smile I saw in court. Not the polite one from press photos. This one was real. We sat outside under the awning, watching the rain pool in cracks on the pavement. She didn't thank me. Not in words. Instead she said, "I sleep through the night now." Then after a pause, I started painting again. Walls. Big, ugly canvases. I laughed. She didn't. "He used to throw them out," she added. Silence. "I'm not okay," she finally said. "But I'm freer than I've been in years." Then she reached into her coat and handed me something. A small envelope. Inside was a photograph, torn at the edges. It showed Brian sitting on a couch. Next to him, a blurred image of a woman I didn't recognize. On the back, in small handwriting, it read, "Not everything stays hidden forever." I looked up at her. She nodded. "Madeline's still digging. There are things she's found, things I never knew." "Like what?" I asked. She stood up, looked out at the parking lot. Cameras. More than we thought. Some were live streaming. One feed was saved. But not by the police. By who? She looked at me. Eyes calm. Voice steady. By him. She handed me a flash drive. "You don't have to watch it. But you should know. He wasn't just dangerous to me." "What's on it?" I asked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Proof." She walked away after that. Didn't say goodbye. And just like that, she was gone again. That night, I stared at the flash drive for hours. I still haven't opened it. Some truths are too loud. Some are too quiet. But the worst are the ones no one ever dares to ask about. Because justice isn't always about verdicts. Sometimes it's about what you're willing to carry, so someone else doesn't have to.